dude.
What's up, dude?
All right. Marzi's gonna be doing the recording and the note taking. You cool with that?
Yep.
All right, bet. Right. So do you want to just jump straight into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty. So the first question is: do you have any experience writing SOPs? If so, what experience?
Yeah, I have actually quite a bit of experience writing standard operating procedures. I wrote all of the standard operating procedures for Nonstop that they currently still use. I made their rosters. I made all of their anything that was on a Google form, Google Slides, Google Sheets. I was the one who made that. Um, so I have quite a experience. And Nonstop was not the only server that still uses my documents. New Day still uses my documents, and several other named servers. But that's just to name a few.
All right. Let's let Marzi finish that. Keep. Okie dokie. So the next question is, why do you want to lead the department instead of joining it? What do you feel about you being the head of the department will make it more successful than you just being a part of it?
Um, well, I guess it's a little complicated question. Obviously, being on the staff team, I was put in a unique position to where I could kind of see some of the concerns that other staff members were having with the other applicants when it comes to for DOJ. So
Hmm.
I obviously had the same concerns, and that's kind of why I reached out to Ghost in the first place and was like, "Hey, I think the concerns are valid that everyone's saying right now. You if you you know uh, I'm willing to do DOJ. I'm willing to apply and see if I can be accepted for this position." And that's when obviously the I guess the admin team voted on allowing it to happen. So um, I I think DOJ is probably the most important role in the server. Um, people will say, oh, it's SASP, but I truly for SASP to even work functionally, you got to have a DOJ that backs it. And then you also have to have a DOJ that backs the civilians and promotes overall balance. So, the reason why I want to lead it is because of my experience in DOJ. Um, Again, I'm a lawyer. I run the biggest law firm on New Day RP. So I have the private sector. I'm a judge for Nonstop. And I Revival. I was a lawyer there and a prosecutor, so I kind of have all of the experience through all sides of the DOJ. Uh, and I think that's just it's a basic requirement to have that experience. So when you're making all of these standard operating procedures and when you're giving your opinion, you're not only just looking at it as, oh, I was a prosecutor one time, now I'm a judge. I'm just going to be really right leaning, police state kind of thing. A lot of the DOJs that I've been with have that very bad, uh, right leaning kind of. I'm only going to side with the cops. That's an issue. I think it needs to be side with the cops when they're doing their job right. But if they're being lazy and not doing proper police work, punish them for it. And you got to make sure that you're being balanced. So that's kind of why I want to be involved is because I've seen it be done wrong so many times. And I rather be a part of the foundation making it rather than 6 months now, 6 months later getting involved in the DOJ and then trying to have to fix everything like I did on New Day. New Day implemented changes that I had almost immediately, and they saw a complete 180 when it comes to the uh, the amount people liked the court system because it promoted balance and it didn't just always side with the cops. So
Yeah, that's good. You caught up, Marzi? Perfect. Okay, the next question is a bit more centered around your character. If you decided on a character that you're going to be playing on the server, and that is what drives your character and why are they motivated to lead a department? Do they have experience, which you've already answered, in command or leading a department? So just give us a bit more depth about your character more than you as a person.
Yeah, Gary Schumann would be my character. Again, he's been a prosecutor, he's been a private attorney, he's been a judge. So he has quite a bit of experience on that side, but he also has LEO experience. He's a U.S. Marshal. He's from Texas, so he's got the Western accent. And a lot of people actually, there are a lot of politics in DOJ. So a lot of people, take it. Oh, he's been a cop. He's going to be a right leaning judge. He's going to be a very Republican, like let's let's do this for the cops kind of judge. And they get the exact opposite. So that's there. He's more harder on cops because he knows how the job needs to be done, and if it's not done properly, obviously he points it out. And it's like, well, you didn't go through the proper processes for this, so no, denied. Your warrant is not being approved. And things like that. So he's got a really big flair when it comes to his ability to do DOJ stuff. Um, he allows people to voice their opinions and then either shuts them down or is like, wow, that's actually a really good idea. Let's implement that. What's your name? Let's get you involved. Let's get you in the DOJ kind of thing. Um, you either love him or you hate him, and I think that's a thing I really like about the character, and something I'm not going to be changing. He's very blunt, and you never really have to wonder where you are with him. So
Yeah, that's good. Good. So is this the same character, obviously, that you played on the other servers, yeah, on New Day and
yeah, yeah.
all right, cool. Alrighty, so this one you've kind of answered a little bit more, but I kind of want to hear more about the experience you've had with the DOJ. So tell us about your experience with this department. As in, like,
Yes,
what have you done on those other servers? Give us a bit more in depth about that.
yeah. So New Day, I think my bar card is like 24. So that means I was a part of the initial wave of lawyers that got hired when the server became a thing. So I've been over there for about 9 months or however long the server has been up for New Day. So I started off as a private attorney. I wasn't really active until I joined the over there. It's called the DOJ, but the prosecutor's office. And that's when I became a undefeated trial attorney, and I still am. So anytime I go into the courtroom, I am undefeated. Um, that's just I very much heavily rely on case law. And that was always my thing was getting case law introduced into the court system. A lot of people didn't realize that United States Supreme Court rulings could be used in court, in a court of law. So when I was able to introduce that factor, but also I was very clear that we should only be accepting case law that can be used to facilitate role play and to where we're not arguing server mechanics. Um, because when you're in a courtroom and people start arguing server mechanics, it becomes very, lack of a better word, cringe because, cops can't do anything to change the mechanics and they can only use what's being given to them. So I never argued server mechanics, but at the same time, we used case law that either um, it relied on the cops and the criminals or even the plaintiffs basically to rely on articulation and actually having to talk and that type of thing. So when I was able to introduce that, that's again when you saw the 180 in the court system because we were able to balance it, and it wasn't just the prosecutors that were able to use all the case law. The plaintiff or the defense was able to start using case law to prove that the rights were being infringed and stuff like that, um, which promoted balance. It made the overall community want to go to court Like, they wanted to plead not guilty to charges because there was actually a fighting chance, for you to go to court. So that's what I'm really proud about being involved in. I want that to I wish that was how it was in the beginning, but I mean, that was a 6-month process, and I basically had to show the chief justice at the time, yeah, I can beat any case and I still want this changed. Like, this is gonna negatively impact my career as a prosecutor, but I still think it should be changed, to promote balance because just winning all the time as a prosecutor isn't fun. I wanna be challenged. I think it should be a balanced playing field. And when I was able to do that and, still win and stuff like that, that's, uh that's when I turned to private and went into the private sector, and was able to show the lawyers that were complaining and saying, "Oh, the prosecutor's office is too overpowered and it's a police state." When I went over to the private side, I was beating the prosecutor still. So, it kind of opened their eyes and we're like, "Okay, well, maybe this isn't impossible. Maybe we just need to be more we need to take a different approach to these cases and use the tools that the DOJ has given us." Um, and again, it's the court system is a lot better than it used to be.
Fair enough. Pretty good. You caught up on that, Marzi? Perfect. Okay, so the next one, there is a statement already going into it that court clerks cannot be corrupt at the beginning of the server. But the question is, what is the extent that you will go to in order to allow different personalities and in turn job performance in the department? This includes corruption. So, like, obviously at the beginning, there's a purple line on here that says court clerks can't be corrupted in the beginning. So I think as staff we've decided that from the get-go we're not going to allow corruption within the DOJ straight away. But obviously as the server progresses, is that something that you're open to?
Yeah, absolutely. On an out of character level, I think corruption brings a lot of role play. It promotes a lot of role play, so I have no problem with it on the out of character level. I definitely agree with the staff decision on that. That it shouldn't be immediately at first until we can, bolster our numbers a little bit. And then maybe even there, there's some type of staff approval for higher level DOJ members, like judges. Like if there's going to be a corruption of a judge, I think maybe that needs to be on staff discretion. Again, that can be discussed with how exactly the staff want to do it, but I'm willing to have that conversation. Um, but I mean, I think it's totally cool to have lawyers gang or tying up with cartels and stuff and being their lawyer and telling them how to avoid the prosecutors and how to avoid warrants and stuff like that. That's technically corruption, but the RP that's happening there is just phenomenal. And I personally would really want to be a part of a system like that because one, as a chief justice, it's your job to maintain the bar, which is all of the attorneys that are allowed to be attorneys in the state. So we can set up things like bar committees to review complaints that come in, and determine their validity and see if these people are they actually committing violations. And then there can be a whole RP line to where one of the members of the bar committee is corrupt, and it can just spiral out of control, and it's going to cause good RP. But at the same time, I think it really needs to be monitored by staff to ensure that the whole DOJ doesn't turn corrupt. So it's a fine line. There's a lot of good RP that can come from it, but I think it just needs to be one of those things that's monitored so we can make sure that the entire integrity of the server isn't compromised by, an entirely corrupt DOJ, which is I think why the staff team voted to have the DOJ not corrupt at in the beginning. So
Perfect. Could you just repeat the last sentence that you said?
uh
No, don't worry. Sorry, he's typing to me as we go.
oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, so that's we've spoke about the corruption in that part of the question. Obviously, the other part of the question is what will you do, or what is the extent you'll go to in order to follow different personalities and job performance as well. So
Um,
obviously, you're going to have a lot of different types of people apply for roles, hopefully in the DOJ. What will you do to allow different personalities and help them perform in their jobs and things like that?
yeah, so the DOJ and any type of lawyer capacity, they have positions like paralegal, court clerk, those type of non-bar certified um, roles to where yes, you do not need a bar license, but you can still do lawyer stuff. It's like a um, it's not even a cadet. I don't know really know how I can compare it to like law enforcement. It's not even a cadet because a cadet still has a law enforcement powers, but it's a position to where it's like an intern. You join, you can still get paid and stuff like that. It's like a paid intern. You do paperwork. I mean, there's people that do their entire careers as a paralegal. So bringing people in to those type of positions, teaching them, getting them to a level to where they can be competent on their own, I think will be probably a very big focus in the beginning so that we can have competent lawyers on both sides, the prosecution's office or the prosecutor's office and on the private sector. But I mean, that's it. I'm going to encourage that paralegals and stuff like that are utilized. But at the same time, if you go up against a lawyer that has a lot more knowledge than you, I mean, it's just going to show. DOJ is a position to where the smarter person normally wins. So um, there's only so much a chief justice can do to promote, bringing different personalities in. So I think giving those different personalities uh, more help when it comes to teaching them how to be a lawyer, I think will be the biggest thing for that, which I think is what the question is asking. But at the same time, I'm not going to give them leeway in a trial. Like I can do everything I can outside of trial, but when it's trial time, I mean, both sides are going to be treated uh, with the same level of uh, you know, they're going to be treated at the same level. So hopefully that kind of answers that.
Yeah, that does. I think we're happy with that. So next question is, how would you encourage department growth?
So obviously, as a chief justice, which this position is, um, the biggest thing you have to worry about is getting judges. Uh, so getting judges that promote balance is going to be a very tough thing in the beginning. You got to have people that have the same goals that you do, because you're going to be promoting them to pretty high positions, like you know a justice, which is one of the higher judge levels, and then you can have just judges. Then you can have magistrates and stuff like that. So promoting the that there is. Uh, it's not just judge. You can move up within the ranks of the judge side. I think will be a really big thing for people and will be a draw. And then additionally, I'm going to make sure that obviously I'm staying on whoever we choose to be the head prosecutor or the DA, and ensure that they're being held accountable on the administrative side, so that we're not discouraging applicants because of like favoritism, for example. Um, that kind of thing will be monitored by myself. And then on the private side, we can have a public defender's office. But again, I believe that conversation needs to be had with the staff and how exactly they want that to go. If they want a government funded, um, lawyers to where they're getting a paycheck like law enforcement, or they only want private. So again, that conversation needs to happen once whoever is selected, and then from there, that's how I can focus on the growth. So there's a bunch of different avenues you can go when it comes to promoting the growth. It kind of just I got to know exactly what the server wants in order to do that. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, what would you prefer as the head of the department? Because obviously you're going to be one if you get the position talking to the staff about it. So what is it that you would want? Would you prefer to go down the route of government paid, or would you prefer to go down the route of allowing private, or would you prefer both?
Yeah, I would prefer both. I think in the beginning, I think we're going to have to do public defenders, so that because a lot of people aren't going to have the money to pay for private sector attorneys. But I think there should be a balance. So someone shouldn't be able. So if someone has $100,000 in their bank account, they shouldn't be able to rely on the government to give them a lawyer. They have obviously enough money to afford their own lawyer, but they want to just feed off the government. So I think there needs to be a checks and balances system when it comes to that, and a check needs to happen before, like, of their bank records and their assets to ensure that this person actually is indigent and needs government assistance. Um, and then from there, if they don't, then they have to go to the private side. But if they do, if they are indigent, then yes, they can have a private attorney or they can have a public defender. So um, and the caveat to that is the public defenders aren't going to be able to put in as much resources into your case as a private attorney would be. Not because the two are going to have different types of powers, but it's because the private attorneys aren't going to have as many cases as the public defenders, so they can treat their cases more on an individual basis. Um, so public defenders is great, but I think we should have both. But public defenders is going to be the really big thing in the beginning because people aren't going to have enough money to be paying for private sector attorneys. And then I personally think every attorney should start off as a public defender so that they get the private side experience before they even go to the prosecutor's office, so that even even if they have to acknowledge it on an out of character level, that there needs to be balance because, you know, being just a prosecutor, and, this is a fault of even mine. When I first started doing lawyer RP, I only was a prosecutor. I didn't even think about the defense side, and that was like I can look back and reflect on that and be like, that really hindered role play because I only was worried about winning my cases as a prosecutor instead of looking at the bigger picture. So I think forcing people to go through like a public defender's office, not only helps us with the caseload with the public defender's office because they're going to have a lot, and bringing new attorneys in and making sure that the public defender's office is big so they can address the amount of cases that are coming in, but it also helps on the individual level for lawyers coming in, to know we want balance and that if it's not balanced, this is these are the consequences. This is what's going to happen. It's not going to be fun. You're going to have the civilians and criminals not wanting to go to court because there's never going to be a chance to win. So promoting that right off the bat and getting that in their heads, you'll see, even let's say I um retire or whatever from the position, I can ensure the people coming up through the ranks of the DOJ are still have that in their mind because they have the experience to lean on and be like, yeah, I really didn't like how that prosecutor was able to just steamroll me, because the the court system wasn't balanced. So when they're a judge, they're able to take that into consideration when they're making these type of decisions that affect everyone, because there's going to be case law in the server like made from our cases, like San Andreas versus so and so. That's going to be able to be referenced forever in other cases in the future. So that's why judges have such like they have a lot of power because they're setting the precedents throughout the entire server. If a judge rules one thing, then this maybe the standard operating procedures for the SASP need to change because one thing isn't allowed anymore. So that's why it needs to be balanced. That's why it needs to be constantly maintained and looked at. And if there's a bad decision, there's going to be an appeal court, where it can be appealed and it goes in front of justices, etc. So
Perfect. Alrighty. So the next one is more based around you. I think you've pretty much answered these, but What are your short-term goals for the department?
Short-term goals immediately is going to be figuring out who is going to be the prosecutor, the head prosecutor. That is going to be a very important role that needs to be filled, and then probably who's going to be the head state or public defender. Those are going to be my two biggest things. I don't, I don't know if I'm going to have to outsource for those or if there is people that have interest. Again, I don't know if the staff has put out any feelers to see if, other than obviously the DOJ applications, not everyone wants to run the DOJ. Maybe there are people in the community right now that just want to be lawyers. Again, that's going to have to be, there's going to have to be like how SASP and Saha did it, where they just opened applications and you know the amount of SASP applications that came in compared to the amount that people wanted to lead it were drastically different. So um, that's going to kind of be the priority is see how many people are interested, and then if I need to outsource, start it immediately so that we can promote uh, a balanced DOJ system.
Yeah, so when it comes to hiring and things like that, like with the other departments, staff won't have any involvement in that. That will be down to the person that is made that department head. So if you get made the department head, it'll be your job to find the person that you are looking for, essentially. So just like Stu did with SASP, he's put together his team. He's done his applications. Everything is down to you. We're just there if you need anything from us on a staff level. To answer that question for you is that when it comes to hiring your public defender and your DA, then it's up to you to do that. You will have to outsource that.
Yeah, yeah, and I wasn't saying that you guys would force me or anything. It's just more of wondering if there are other people in the community that
Uh,
have like made interest kind of thing.
yeah, I mean, I know of some people that are in here that who played lawyers or were interested in lawyers. Marzi, for instance, would love to have a lawyer. Um, but yeah, one thing like we've told, I think when you listened in on like the police interviews and stuff, one thing we always said was that the other applicants, if they aren't successful, um, you should definitely reach out to those. Obviously, you know that the only applicant before was Adels. Adels is fantastic. Um, he would be a very good person to reach out to, I would say. Is that something you're okay with, like reaching out to the other two applicants? Because
Yeah,
obviously,
absolutely.
there's not a lot of you that applied. Let's not beat around the bush. The DOJ is not everyone's cup of tea. It's a lot more work than any other department, in my opinion. I mean, it's your job to write the laws for the service, so people are going to hate you. People are going to love you. Um, the other two applicants, obviously, Ace and Adels, they're both fantastic. So they've been told the same as I'm telling you now, which is I do 100% recommend reaching out to those two if you are successful and seeing if they're willing to help. Or I think Adels has probably got more folders on his computer than I'm willing to accept based on RP law. so um, that's good. Obviously, the next question is what are your long-term goals? Which again, you've pretty much answered already in the first three questions. So, but continue. What are your long-term goals?
Yeah, I mean, just not to make this long-winded like all my other questions, but I mean, the long-term goal of DOJ is to be a balanced court system that promotes, the as cringy as it sounds, promotes justice, but at the same time promotes balance and to where, members of the community on an out of character level can acknowledge that, you know, there is a chance when you're going to the DOJ um, to win a case, uh, because it's going to be well known that the judges are fair and are not one side leaning. Um, so that's going to be the biggest goal, long term wise, is to have the confidence of the community that uh, rather they're a cop or they're a civilian. If you put enough work into your case by hiring the better lawyer and possibly private investigators in the future, if you're on the private side or if you're on the defense side, um, you know, that's gonna determine the outcome of your case. So, um, and being a smart criminal, like, are you covering your tracks? Are you making sure there's no forensic evidence? What are you uh, making sure you're not storing your weapons in your house so the detectives can't find it, where they can't connect it to you? That kind of thing is going to matter, because when it finally gets brought up into court, um, you covered your tracks, so they don't have, they might have probable cause, but they don't have beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the standard you need to convict. So, just promoting that type of thing would be the biggest thing. Um, and yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, so this one is, what criteria do you think promote? Apparently, the person who wrote this can't spell in English. Okay, no, they can. I just can't read it. Do you think? What criteria do you think promotions in disciplinary should be based on?
So the bar association, which will be the bar and what determines if you're a lawyer or not, there's going to be a very clear guidelines on what you can and can't do. If you violate the bar, then you will receive a bar strike. That's kind of how it is. I mean, a judge can receive a bar strike if they violate the bar. So no one's going to be above the law. Again, I think in the future, I do want to make a bar committee, which will be a group of 4 people that are voted in by other lawyers, who will review bar complaints and vote on if one, they have merit, and if they have merit, if there should be an immediately just a strike because there was enough evidence provided, or if there should be a bar hearing where the 4 people sit on a board, and it's just like court, but we have the accused on the other end, and we talk to them about why, the violations, and see if there's merit, that kind of thing. As for promotions, as I've already said, it's going to be based off of. I mean, it's hard to say because I mean, like for law enforcement, you can say, oh, if you're doing your job correctly, the DOJ, everyone's going to say you're doing your job wrong, depending on what side you're on. If you're a cop and your case gets dismissed, you're going to hate the prosecutor. So I mean, it really depends on um, a lot of factors, but overall, it's going to be if one, you're following the bar, two, you understand what we want from a court system, and three, can you promote balance? So the only promotions I'm really going to be in charge of is judges. So, I'm not going to, so I'm not really going to be doing any of the prosecutor promotions or um, the public defenders. I'm going to be in charge of selecting the lead of that department. But other than that, I don't have any more say than that. So, on that individual level, I'm going to ensure that the prosecutors are being fair and they're not doing anything, or the head prosecutor is being fair and he's not promoting favoritism. And, that's all I can really do, um, on that level. Obviously, if there's other issues going on, I can uh, do internal investigations. But I mean, it really depends on who are selected for the roles. So the biggest thing is picking someone in those roles to be fair, balanced, and again, making sure they know what we want from the court system.
Perfect. Okie dokie. The next one, it's a fun question. How will you avoid your command becoming a clique or a popular role? Wait, what? Or a popularity role? That is not spelled correctly.
Um, yeah, I mean, popularity is never really going to be a big thing in the court system, especially on the judge side. I mean, you're going to be pissing one side off with one case, but the very next case, that one side that liked you is going to hate you because you went against them. So um,
Um, I think the question's more leading towards, say I'm a judge, Marzi's a lawyer or a public defender. If I decide, Marzi's my friend out of character, I want him to be a judge too, and I just promote him up to a judge, what are you going to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? So that, if a group of people become judges, it doesn't become a, how do I put it? An SOE. It doesn't become a, you can't do this because you're not friends with this person.
I've never really had an issue separating out of character and in character personally. Never had that issue before. So I mean, it really depends on the in character. Like um, if they're doing everything right in character and they've applied and they've gone through the process, which there is going to be a process to apply to be a judge. And there was and there's an interview, um, and then it's not a popularity contest. It's gonna be, are you meeting the criteria for the position? And the criteria is gonna be very clear on what we're looking for, which is, are you gonna be impartial? That's the biggest thing. Do you have the experience on the prosecutor side, and the private side, or do you have enough experience on one side or the other to make you a valuable asset as a judge? Because it's not going to be a requirement that you had to be a prosecutor in order to be a judge. But again, it only helps you if you're able to say, "Yeah, I was able to do both sides. I know what I'm doing." That kind of thing. So, yeah, out of character is really never going to impact the in character positions, um, except what we talked about with the corruption thing. So,
Okay,
um,
perfect. Yeah, obviously, it's just there's been issues on other servers before where some people don't feel comfortable applying for a role within BCSO or LSPD because it's a men's club. Like you can only be there and you'll only fit in there if you're friends with the other people that are in command and that sort of stuff. And we don't want that here. So we asked that to every department head in their interview, just to see how you would handle it if you felt like a clique was forming, how you would deal with it.
yeah, I mean, I obviously would want everyone in the DOJ to be friends and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, that's never really going to impact what happens on the promotional side.
Perfect. And just let Marzi finish typing. Man types with two fingers.
I do though.
Okay, so the next one you pretty much answered up there, but I'm going to make you do it again. How confident are you that you will be able to keep OOC and IC issues separate within your department? So, say me and you are judges and we have an argument in Discord completely unrelated to anything to do with DOJ or the server, and we stop talking to each other, but we still have that job of being judges together on the server. How are you going to deal with that not leaking into IC?
Um, I mean, it's at the end of the day, like I said, I've never had an issue separating in character and out of character. So it really depends on what you're doing in character. Obviously, if there's, so it's kind of hard for me to answer that because my head doesn't process role play like that. So I mean, it's role play. If your character, Jon Snow, was was doing everything correctly and was obviously doing everything correctly, well, I'm not going to have an issue with him. Even if you're out of obviously out of character, you did something to where we had a disagreement. So at the end of the day, it just comes down to role play, and are you? So I'm never really going to take the out of character side into it.
Okay, so it won't be a problem with you, but say, for instance, I'm the judge in a case, Marzi is the criminal that is being prosecuted. I don't like Marzi. It's well known that I don't like Marzi, and I use that to make sure that I win. So, say someone in your department is being a sussy backer and deciding to bring OOC issues in character within your department, which makes your department look bad. How would you handle that?
I mean, honestly, that is going to be a staff level um, issue right there. I mean, from an in character perspective, I can't like. There's going to be no. I can't do anything about that. So I mean, that's going to be there's going to need to be player reports submitted. I can encourage that as much as I can as the head of DOJ on an out of character level, but I mean in character, I might not even know about that conversation or that you guys have a disagreement, and two, like it wouldn't even make sense for my character to even know that. So I would lean on staff as much as possible. If I notice something like that is going on, obviously I'd bring it to staff's attention. But at the end of the day, I mean that is a staff level thing. I don't really, as the head of DOJ, I don't really have a say into that. As staff, obviously, I do, but on as the department head, I mean, there's not much I can do.
Perfect. Yeah, so obviously, like we said to the other guys, that, like Marziano, for instance, who's a staff member that's also a department head, when it comes to a situation where, there has been what we've just spoke about happen in your department, obviously you do understand that as the head of the department and a staff member, you will excuse yourself from that situation, right? You'd let the other staff handle it.
Mhm.
Correct. All right. Perfect. Some people didn't see that, but yeah, obviously, if you as long as you know that, that's great, because that would probably be worse than the original
Yeah,
report.
I would probably just escalate everything and piss even more people off by doing that. So,
Perfect. Now, here's a question where I hope the answer is nothing. You're all gods. Thank you very much. But what would you require from the devs, and how essential is it to the department?
um, the biggest thing that I would require is the government payroll thing.
Mhm.
Making sure that our guys are being paid. Additionally, we got to have
Denied.
forms. We got to have forms. The DOJ needs to be able to have a forms on the website to where we can have one. All of our lawyers portal, which has the bar information and can be edited as case law comes in and changes are made. But we have to have some type of archive for all of our cases. I personally would love that though if we were able to integrate the forms into in game like an MDT tablet, and we were able to just sit in game and I know you can put a web browser in game on a tablet. I don't, from the very little deving I can do, I know that's possible, but I don't know if it's integratable with the framework. So I think that would be really cool if we were able to do that. That's just a quality of life thing. But I mean, requirement wise, we're going to need to be able to pay the the government employees. Um, we're going to need to have a forms so that we can have all of our cases on there. And then the rest is just quality of life as they come up. Having the forms integrated in game in a tablet. That kind of thing.
Yeah. So
So
on so straight off the bat, we're already building a DOJ MDT, so that's fine. Every department will have an MDT. So SASP's got their MDT. If you're a cop and you open up the MDT, it will bring up the SASP one. If you're a doctor, you'll have the SAHA one, and you'll have medical records and all that shit. If you're SADCA, you'll have access to people's criminal records, so you can check how long they're in jail for, all that shit. DOJ is the last one to build, but me and Ghost are already building a DOJ MDT, so you'll have that in game. What would you need on there, like in detail of what you obviously you'd need access to the reason why the person was arrested, right?
yeah, so um, but so I'll give you an issue that is going on over on New Day. So currently, right now, the prosecutor's office has access to the MDT, the police MDT. So they are able to see everything. They're able to run people as if they were cops. And that doesn't promote balance because the defense doesn't have that. The defense has to go through FOIAs, which is Freedom of Information Act, and they have to submit those type of requests. So when it comes to who has access, I think the DOJ, uh, I say DOJ as in like the actual judges, they need to have access to people's profiles. They need to be able to say they need to be able to go through expungements. So they need to look and see what their crimes were, the reports that officers wrote, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But I mean, more than that, I really don't think anyone should have law enforcement access besides judges. And then from there, the prosecutors and the defense can put in requests for freedom of information, or the prosecutors can create a working relationship with the SASP, and they can have a shared, they can have an agreement for shared information, or something in that regard. But they shouldn't be able to willy nilly be able to look people up if
No,
they're not
I agree.
already if they're not already have a case. So maybe it's something to where you put on, if they're a prosecutor, they can only look at cases, like they can only look up report numbers or something in that regard, because a trooper's like, yep, this report number is the arrest that's going to come up, be looking for it. They can look up a report number, and that's it. I don't think they should be able to run someone and see if they have active warrants, for example, like that. That's not balance. That
No,
should be
that's
a cop's
a
job.
cop or a judge level thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, obviously, as a judge for you guys, an idea that I put forward to Ghost was being able to say that, you know, lawyers, judges, the DOJ as a whole has somewhere where once as the case is going on, there can be an active case on the MDT where you can add notes and evidence and stuff like that. When you're done, you then wrap up the case and save it. But then I think it'd be pretty cool if there was somewhere where lawyers can go onto their MDT and type in a case. So they could say Marziano versus San Andreas, and it would bring up all the notes and everything from that case. Is that something that would be that you'd be interested in having? Is that something that's needed, or
I think that'd be hold on one second. I think that'd be really cool. But at the same time, I just think it needs to be that, like, the biggest thing I want to like reiterate is balance. So I don't think one side should have more of an advantage than the other.
oh, that'd be
Um,
public. That'd be public. They could go to
okay, yeah, then yeah, that would be that
so
would be
they'd be able to
great.
go to City Hall. I could go as Fred to City Hall and say I want to look up this case and put a request in for it, which would obviously the request would go to the DOJ, who would then search that up and give me a copy of it.
Yeah, that would be really cool. I mean, at the end of the day, I have a lot of ideas and stuff like that, and I'd love to sit down and talk about it. Uh, I think it's a better discussion to have when I actually have the people in the roles for prosecutor and stuff like that. But I mean, just as an example, I think the prosecutor's office should have their own detectives. That's like a pretty like bizarre thing that a lot of people don't realize actually happens in real life. They have DA investigators, full-fledged law enforcement guys that are there that only work on cases that are in active like are in the court process. And those are the guys that go up and have conversations with victims and say, hey, this is going to be a really hard conversation we're about to have because, you were, whatever happened to you, you were assaulted, but I need to prepare you for the stand because you're going to be having to go up on the stand and you're going to need to be able to tell the court what happened. So let's me and you have that hard conversation and then we can go from there. So obviously that kind of conversation is going to need to be had with the head of SASP because that's going to be a law enforcement capacity, So, I mean, I have all of those type of ideas, but I can't implement stuff like that without talking to the head of state. And then maybe he makes a division for that so that they're troopers still, but they can be leased out, or maybe we get leased out detectives, something in that regard. So, I have a lot of ideas in the regard of on the development side, uh, but I hate to. I'm never going to be a leader that just is like I want something. It's got to be what the entire DOJ wants and needs. Like there has to be a need for it because obviously as developers and I'm sure you guys are going to get a lot of requests. So when there's a request from DOJ, I want it to be like, oh shit, we need to put this in because we're not going to be making a lot of requests. I don't want it to be a what is it, boy cry wolf kind of situation to where
Yeah.
we're just making a million requests. I want it to be like, hey, I know you like did all of this for us, 6 months ago. We had an idea now that we want implemented, and you'd be like, oh yeah, you never asked for anything. Let's do this.
Perfect.
If
My
that makes
favorite kind of
sense. So
people. That's fine.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So the next question I hate, but I don't get it. How will you deal with taking time out from your role, be it to play another character or burning out on 5M?
So thank God, the like the Chief Justice position is, I mean, it has a lot of say, it has a lot of power, but I have always been a big, like, on a role play level, I don't think the heads of departments should be as involved as the lower level people. Like, I don't think a colonel of the state police should be more active than a trooper, because who's going to investigate the colonel? You know what I mean? So, um,
Me.
yeah. So, that's why as the chief justice, I'm going to be involved in the court system, but I'm only really going to be involved in appeals. I'm not going to be taking district court level cases. So if there's obviously in the beginning, we're probably going to have to make an exception to that. But once we have a full staff of judges, um, I'm really only going to be involved in appeals. So I don't see myself getting burned out. But if I do, then obviously I need to have a full staffed, uh, justice system, to where if I need to take a leave of absence, then um, someone can be there to make the executive decision, I guess you can say. But at the same time, majority of my job on that end can be handled over the forums and over Discord. Um, so
Perfect. That is exactly how I expected that answer. So obviously, what happens if you get burnt out on 5M? What if you wake up one morning and you're just like, nah, fuck that, I'm going to play Roblox?
I think I'll definitely need to communicate that with the staff team and be like, hey,
Well, you are
forewarning.
staff, so I would hope so.
Yeah, be like, forewarning, I am burnt the fuck out. Um, you know, I I would put a limit on me, be like, hey, I'm burnt out right now. I'm gonna give it a month. If I'm still feeling this way at the end of the month, I'm gonna resign the position, and I'll give you someone else to take this position. Because I don't think someone should be in that type of position holding it up when they're burnt out and when they're not contributing as much as they can be. I definitely want to be in this position for the long run, and I don't see any time where I'd be stepping down. But at the same time, if I'm ever in that position, to where I'm burned out, I'm not having the same type of passion I've had for the DOJ system, then I'm clearly going to just need to step down. And the entire time, I need to be very vocal with staff so that you guys can pick a new lead. Um, so that needs to be utterly clear as well. Like, who do you like? You know, if I'm asked by staff, who do you think should take over from you? I need to be able to have an answer. So. Um, that's also going to be in the back of my head the entire time, in the back of my mind.
Perfect. Uh, Sorry, I just got a very distracting message. Perfect. Yeah. Obviously, we all get burnt out from time to time. I think everyone at the moment in the PRP Discord is in the opposite. They all just want to play the server. So hopefully, people don't get burnt out quite as quick as they did in other places that we won't name. Righty, Muzzy, you're not burnt out. Shut the fuck up. Um, how would you work with other department heads? So how would you, as the chief justice or whatever it is, how would you make sure that you're working closely with the colonel and the chief of medicine, whatever the hell they're called in Saha, the fire chief, making sure everybody is chief medical officer apparently. How would you work with those other people?
I think in the beginning we're going to need to have a pretty lengthy meeting. Um, I have a very clear way on how I want to do things on the chief justice level. But at the same time, like I explained earlier, I'm not a as much as I am a judge and I can just, stomp the gavel down and that's the end of it. I'm actually open to having communication with people. And if they're able to, one, change my mind by giving me an alternate method, absolutely, that's what we're going to do. But at the same time, if I still disagree with them, I want to be able to explain why. Because the majority of the time, when I'm able to sit down with someone and just talk to them, 98% of issues can be avoided. And because we're able to talk through it, and they understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it's for the betterment of the entire DOJ, if that makes sense. So when I'm able to sit down with someone, I avoid 99% of or 98% of issues. There's always going to be that 2% where it's like they are just not wanting to budge because they want it to go their way. And at the end of the day, we're not always going to agree on everything. Like, you know, SASP isn't always going to agree with allowing the private side to have private investigators, because the private investigator's job is to point out the fuck ups on the state, on the police officer's side. They're the ones going back and talking to all the witnesses and seeing if there's anything the troopers missed. So by their job, or by their job description, it is a conflict with state. So being able to, and I think and I've obviously already talked with the colonel about certain ideas I've had when I did my interview. And I told him there was a very good chance that I would be taking, or that I could get DOJ. And I've already had conversations with him about integration and how exactly the SASP would work with the DOJ. And I mean, they were really good conversations. Obviously, I didn't have the position to back anything I was saying. It was all hypothetical talking. But I think the people we've put in positions for running state. Obviously, I haven't been able to talk to obviously our lead of Saha here on an individual level, but I have enough confidence in him to where if I feel like we need to sit down and have a conversation about integration with Saha and DOJ, it's going to be a very easy one because we kind of all want the same thing, and that's the integration of all of our departments intertwined and working like a well-oiled machine to where we don't necessarily have to do our job. We just get to just sit back and watch our system that we make in the beginning, which we're going to put blood, sweat, and tears in, work. And if there is ever a hiccup, we can have a meeting and we can talk about it and fix something as the needs of the departments are ever changing. So
Yeah.
open lines of
Obviously,
communication is the biggest thing.
one thing that is, in my opinion, the most important person that you'll be working with is when the governor and everyone is appointed.
Yep.
What's your plans with DOJ and the governor? Obviously, the governor is they're important to the DOJ. They work together. So how would you work with the governor when that person is appointed?
So when it comes to RP elections, um, kinds of shit was elected sheriff.
No, we had
So
the same thing in SOE, but with the governor.
yeah, so that type of thing happened, and that guy could have literally, if he knew what he was doing, he could have completely fucked the entire server because he could have appointed all of corrupt people in positions, and he could have just completely, changed everything, and it could have been horrible.
Yeah,
But fortunately, the chief justice had enough power to where the sheriff couldn't do anything to him. So that chief justice position was able to, if there was a complaint, that chief justice was able to do something about the sheriff. Like there was something that could have been done there, articles of impeachment, etc. I am very strong in thinking that even if we have an elected governor, I don't think they should be in charge of who is the chief justice. I think that needs to be a staff level decision because the chief justice has more power than the governor when it comes to law, legislation, that kind of thing. The
hmm
chief justice can veto anything if he deems it unconstitutional. So in real life, the chief justice is appointed by the governor, or that type of position is appointed by the governor. But at the same time, there's a lot more checks and balances that go into that. And even judges are elected into that position in the first place. So the pool is a lot smaller for that governor to be able to appoint, because there's only so many judges. And then it has to go through a panel, and it's like, the panel has to agree on that chief justice. So it's a huge process in real life. So I think at the end of the day, me and the governor are going to have to have a really good working relationship, but it needs to kind of be clear that a governor cannot just be like, no, the court system needs to go this way. It needs to be only in the minds of the felons, and because those are the guys that elected me, and we need to cater to criminals. Um, it's like, no, and I can't be afraid to say no and risk losing my position. So, and that's just the RP side of it, unfortunately. That's like the OOC side of it that position needs to be reinforced, because in real life it is. And yes, officially the governor has to sign, the chief justice in real life. But at the same time, they can't just remove them as simply as they would be able to in RP. So, it's
Yeah,
definitely got to be
well,
a discussion. But
yeah. I mean, we can obviously do that system of, staff appoint the chief justice, obviously.
I
Uh,
think that would be my biggest concern, is if the governor is able to hold policy over his head and be like, do this or you're losing your position. So I think as long as that is clear, I mean, it can be a really good working relationship, because it's clear on not who's the boss, but it's like, instead of going into this conversation thinking that one person is over the other, they can go into the conversation thinking, this is we need a debate, because there's uh, there's things for both of us to compromise on, so that we can get the bigger overall goal. And I'm gonna need, like, if I think something needs to change, I'm gonna need to go to the governor and be like, hey, I think legislation needs to be like, we need to put in legislation to um, change this thing, or hey, ultimately you have the decision on who gets who's going to be the next head prosecutor. Let me tell you my recommendations as the chief justice, and kind of go from there, that kind of thing. um, so ultimately the rules need to be set in stone by staff prior to that type of position being elected, on where it stands with the integration of DOJ. And I'm totally up for having that conversation on how exactly I think it needs to be balanced. um, but at the end of the day, the governor is it's yeah, I mean, I don't really know what else to say other than what I have, but yeah.
yeah, no, that's perfect. As obviously, governor isn't something we've opened up for applications yet, but it is being discussed. Um, Governor and DOJ are the two departments that work closest with staff anyway. You kind of
Yeah.
decide which direction the server goes in. I think NoPixel is a great example of that, where you know the governor or whatever the fuck they call it on NoPixel and the supreme judge, I think, or whatever they call it there.
Yeah.
It happens. It changes the meta of the server depending on what they decide to do. So
Yeah, when
those
I
two
was no
people need to be together. So
yeah, I mean, that's actually a good example. No Pixel, when I was an attorney over there, um when the prosecutor we had issues with the governor, for example, when we were prosecutors. So we were able to go to the chief justice, voice our concerns about the governor, um, and be like, "Hey, he's not committing any crimes yet, but he's very on the borderline of committing crimes. We need this to be like addressed." And the chief justice was able to deal with it. Obviously, we weren't able to see what was going on, but it was dealt with. So at the end of the day, I agree with that. I think the chief justice and the governor are going to be the ones setting the tone for the RP. If it's going to be the super realistic, like, RP, or if it's going to be super laid back and memey. I mean, that's all really going to be dependent on the governor and the court system. Because if you have a very memey governor that like, makes post about fucking doing drugs and, doing all that crazy shit that one governor did on NoPixel, then the server meta is going to be memey and like all that kind of stuff. But if you have someone that's like, oh yes, I'm for the people, we need to do this kind of thing, it's going to change the meta, in my opinion. So, um, yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yep. Perfect. So next one, how much time can you dedicate to the department if you get the role?
Uh, I mean, as much as the role is going to require. Um, I don't really have a set amount. I'm not going to be like 40 hours a week because it's a job. It just depends on how much it's going to require. If in the beginning, obviously, it's going to require a lot of time, documentation, that kind of stuff. So initially, I'm going to be very involved. But as it goes on, I'm going to put in what the position requires, if that makes sense. So I don't want to be on too much to where, like I said earlier, it's not promoting balance because all of the rulings are coming from the Chief Justice, which can't be appealed. Um, but at the same time, I want to make sure I'm involved in the appeal process. So um, the server direction is going where it needs to be. If staff, like you were saying, DOJ works with staff. So if I need to change a ruling because that's not the way staff wants the server direction to be going, I need to be able to, I'll be available for that. So again, I'll be on as much as the role requires me.
Perfect. Right. So the next one is, do you have any questions for us?
Um, I think you pretty much were able to answer everything. I think what exactly is I guess when is this position going to be announced, and then when will that, like, is that meeting going to be ran by staff with all the heads, or how exactly is that going to work?
Um, so the way we did it before, I think you won't be involved in the discussion and voting for
Yeah.
yourself. But it will run the same way as we did the voting for the other departments. Um, there's a channel that will be created. Marzi, obviously, correct me if I'm wrong because I am the worst admin in the world and don't pay attention.
It's already created.
Yeah, so there'll be a channel that we'll have the discussion in there. You and Ace will probably be removed from that channel. Um, just like we were with the others, we kind of removed the others from that. Like Marzi was removed from the Saha ticket so that he couldn't see what people were writing about him and other applicants, which I think is the fairest way of doing it. Obviously, if I sit there and go, nah, his interview was shit, I don't want him to be Chief Justice, and you see it, you know,
Yeah,
that's not fair.
are you able to see
It's not
anything
fair
on
on
your
you.
player reports right now, Street?
No, Pebbles reached out to me already and told me he removed me from
Okay,
the
good.
channel. Yeah.
Yeah. So the rest of the staff team will now be able to listen to this recording and see your panel interview questions. And then I aim to have it before Christmas. Me and Pebbles will do everything within our power to have an answer before Christmas because Adels has been waiting for like a month now. Which is on us as admins because we weren't happy with only having one applicant anyway. Especially considering that one applicant obviously ran the DOJ on SOE pretty much for the entire of SOE's life. We wanted more. We wanted fresh blood. Like I don't know any of you guys. You don't know me, which is why I wanted to just sit in and listen to everyone's interview. So we can kind of see the other two people. I think Ace reached out at the same time as you. Um, so yeah, that's basically it. We'll have a chat. Everyone will listen and read everything. They'll then give their 2 cents on how your interview went and what they think of you and the other applicants, and then we will let the person who gets the most votes know. I think there is a majority, right, Marzi, that you have to win by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right now there is.
Yeah, yeah. So whoever wins by the majority will get the position, and you'll be let know on the day that the admins get the numbers tallied up, and either me, Ghost, Pebbles, Cosmic, or Cheska will reach out to you and say, "Hey, yo, you're Chief Justice now. Crack on." and then it will pretty much be get things going from that point on. I think everyone else has kind of just started getting their shit in order and hiring people.
Gotcha.
One thing you should have asked for in the dev question, by the way, is the option to sit at the desk and press E to hit the gavel. God.
I actually, hold on. This is I gotta find something. I actually already have a gavel. 1 second. Right here. Boom. Look at that.
Perfect. Jessica has one for our staff meetings too.
No,
Great.
that's me. I do.
Oh no, sorry, it's Marzi that has it. Yeah, there we go.
That's funny.
But yeah, obviously one thing I've been doing lately is finding the interiors for the department heads. Obviously the police departments, I'll be completely honest, I don't care about them, so I haven't, every police station on every server is the same. Everyone uses Gab's MRPD or Uncle Just's fucking Sandy one. But if you do get the position, I will reach out to you. And if you've already got a courthouse in mind, if you know of an interior, let me know and you can come and test it out and stuff like that. And I'll show you some that I've already got and things like that.
Yeah, and I actually have a few that aren't released as well that I can show you. One of my buddy does he does all that kind of stuff, the blueprints and all that. So
yeah, I mean, I've got pretty much every Gab's prompt or Breeze interior there is on the internet. I would rather try and avoid using Uncle Just interiors because they're like fucking a million years old and broken as shit.
yeah, and the lighting is always messed up on those.
Yeah, that's why we have Cheska. Okay, the last question is pretty much the same as the last question. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I pretty much expanded on all my answers, so I think I've really said everything. Obviously, when I brought up the prosecutors having their own detectives again, that needs to be discussed with SASP to see how exactly if they're willing to do something like that. And at the end of the day, that all needs to be conversations that need to be had. But I want to have what's best for the DOJ, so that's kind of how I want that to go. I guess another question I had now that I just thought of it is currently on nonstop, and I think this is a good system. Well, I guess I'm up to having your opinion about it, but the Chief Justice is the one that picks new department heads when it comes to state police, Saha, and any department head position, it's appointed by the Chief Justice. How exactly are you guys going to be doing that? Like, I know we talked about staff doing that, but how are we going to integrate that in character? Because obviously we can't say, oh yeah, the city engineers elected this new colonel. So how is that going to be integrated in character?
Well, that'll be a question for Cosmic, as he is the admin in charge of departments. Shockingly, I'm the one in charge of crime, which is a bit weird why I'm doing the DOJ interview, but hey, here we are. But I don't know. I don't think we'll be called city engineers. I kind of would rather see it as staff and devs are seen as the government rather than
We're the FIB.
Yeah, well, the FIB, bitch.
Oh god.
The men in black suits that will come to take you away. But yeah, that will definitely be a question for Cosmic. So reach out to Cosmic, I guess, and see what his plan is for that. Mainly because I'm a crim main and I really don't know or understand how that all works. I just dev things for that. That's fine. So
Well, I guess
Cosmic is your best bet.
my suggestion for that would be, I think those conversations should still happen on a staff level.
Mm-hmm.
Like if we lose SASP head, we should obviously listen to the colonel and be like, hey, this is who I think it should replace me. But at the end of the day, it should be up to staff discretion.
Oh,
and
it
then
will be 100%.
then the staff should decide, and then they can use the Chief Justice role to announce it, if
Oh,
that makes
yeah, I
sense.
think that's what we did on SOE anyway. So it was always Judge Warbucks that would announce and hand over the "You're the sheriff now." Would all meet
Gotcha.
up at City Hall and do it that way. Um, but yeah, I'm all for listening to the Colonel if they recommend someone. But at the end of the day, that is how cliques are formed. So I will use the BCSO as an example. Actually, no, LSPD. LSPD from SOE. It was a very clique happy place. So, everyone in command was best friends. They all had their own separate Discord. They only ever talked or played with each other. So, for new people joining the server that apply for LSPD and they get in, you kind of off the bat, you kind of get the feeling there's no room for you to ever become chief of police or anything because you're not friends with them.
Yeah.
That is something we want to avoid 100% in every department. I don't want anybody, no matter where they come from, to join a department and have the impression that they can only get to this level. They can't go above that because they're not friends with the person at the top. That's what we want to avoid. We don't want cliques or friendship groups that are like out of character friendship groups. Say I I actually only applied for cop the last 3 weeks of SOE's
Yeah,
existence.
yeah, right when it went down.
And I've played the server for a year. I was a dev on the server for 6 months, and I didn't want to join the BCSO because it was a clique of friends that have always been cops on that server. And I know full well that there's no chance of me ever getting up to like high ranks in the server. Like there was no passion for me to drive to want to go and do anything other than be a deputy, press W and win. I don't want that, especially not in the DOJ, because people you could start off as a paralegal in the DOJ and work your way up to being a judge. Like you want people to put the time and effort in to grind that out in the server. So as long as that is something that is possible within every department, then we should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. I never want anyone to feel as if they can't progress, and it's my plan to be approachable enough to where if anyone ever feels that way, they can come to me and I can try to, I can address it. I can strike it
Yeah.
down immediately. And I don't want them to feel as if there's some type of punishment for coming to me about that type of concern. So
Yeah.
that's
So
definitely going to be a priority.
one thing that was brought to the admin chat today, where is it? Fuck's sake, where is it? Sorry, apparently we spoke to each other a lot in. Did you play on SOE?
A long time ago.
Okay, so one thing we will make sure everyone who is appointed a department head is, and I kind of want to tell them before they even know if they are going to be a department head or not, is that moderation is. You should know this already. You're a staff member, by the way. Moderation is required, and this isn't SOE. So every admin and moderator will have access to your command chat for moderation purposes. Obviously, they're not going to fucking just jump in there and start chatting mad shit because they can. The people that we've picked to be staff on our server, they're trustworthy people. We trust them to, respect the fact that they have access to that server to make sure people aren't breaking rules and guidelines within that channel. So your whatever the fuck it's called, where is it? DOJ. There's a channel in there that's called Judges Chambers, which obviously only your judges and chief of whatever the hell it's called will have access to that channel. Obviously, staff will be there to monitor that channel as long as you're aware of that and okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally plan to have all of those type of channels in character, unless there is I think there could be a designated out of character channel. I don't, that depends on what exactly the staff wants from that. But
It's called
personally,
general chat.
yeah, exactly. So I think all of those type of channels should be in character anyways. So, I mean, yeah, I don't really think there will be even a need for a lot of moderation. Unless you guys are coming in and being like, "Hey guys, we've seen an issue with this," and then we can have that kind of discussion can be had right there. Um, but I mean, other than that, I don't really see you guys getting involved with it, so
Yeah, so
I don't have an issue with
if
you guys.
I think someone brought up a an issue basically where they don't want people who may be say a deputy or a trooper in SASP having access to that channel just because they're staff and using that information or leaking that information, which we kind of took as a bit of an offense. You can stop recording now, by the way, Mazzy.